welcome to Savor Newark, the podcast. As we know at Plusable, we're particularly passionate about how authentic the food scene in Newark truly is. But today we're not going to be talking about restaurants because beekeeping, agriculture, and environmental redevelopment are equally important. And with that in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Marcellius Alexander Counts as the founder of Apian Industry. Welcome to Savor Newark. What an honor. What a great contribution. Beekeeping, agriculture in Newark, normally people don't associate these concepts with a city like Newark, but apparently there's a vibrant scene.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like I'm very grateful. I mean, trust me, the honor's all mine. We're always looking for opportunities to kind of uplift and highlight our message and get the word out. But I'm part of a network of not only beekeepers, but urban farmers, healers, herbalists, chefs, people who are self-taught, people who are coming from those particular disciplines and backgrounds, and then even how we've been able to talk about like my background coming in with social work. So you see how a lot of these other skills are kind of being brought out, and people are able to use them to kind of forward the message.
So let's start with that. So you went to college at Seton Hall.
Yep, correct.
You studied social work,
hmm
and in your last semester, you discovered beekeeping.
So Seton Hall was an interesting experience because at college everybody's like, oh, like go, go far, stuff like that. But I chose to stay local just because that was where I was accepted at, and I got a full ride actually pursuing pre-med. So that was my first iteration. My first passion was really like wanting to heal, wanting to help people in a really meaningful way. But then, like many people, if different things pop up and then your interest might change, or once you learn more about it, you're like, is this really the career that's really going to suit me? And I really didn't want to wait 8, 10 years before I could really start making a difference. I really wanted to find something that would allow me to like be effective in the issues that are affecting me right now. So I thought social work would be, I did social work and Africana studies. I thought that would give me an opportunity to really, make a difference, make some change. And, I learned that that necessarily wasn't it either. So
But you always had this intention of healing.
yeah, yeah.
So the beekeeping, what was so beautiful that I know that you're a creative person as
Mhm.
well, so this allows you to be creative and an entrepreneur. Um, when did you feel that this is my purpose?
So it's funny because people often say like, "Oh, did you always grow up wanting to be a beekeeper or a farmer and things like that?" And I really never had any inclination or any influence before I was volunteering at WBGO. So everybody knows me as a civil servant and like a lifelong volunteer. So always lending myself to different causes and different initiatives to try and drive change and stuff like that. So education I'm a strong proponent of education, helping youth. You got the homelessness crisis. You have all these different issues that, Newark, we're like a hotbed for all those things. So whereas some people might look at it like a challenge, I also see an opportunity. So if we figure out these systems, there's just unlimited people you can help. So that's what kind of led me to, so I'm volunteering, I'm going different places, and I ended up doing a fellowship at WBGO, and they offered us to do a volunteer event. So I'm at the volunteer event, and with WBGO, they would actually allow a lot of the listeners to come and volunteer, so they can get to get access to some different events and stuff like that. So I'm sitting down with a gentleman, we're volunteering at the table, and he's like, he was a neuroscience professor from Montclair State, and he had just started doing hobbyist beekeeping. And the way he was talking about was very candid, not like, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary, I'm changing the world. He was like, yeah, I got some bees, and I lost some last winter. I lost most of them last winter. And I'm like, okay, okay. So, I mean, you lost some of your bees. He's like, I produce more honey than I know what to do with. I'm like, okay, like that sounds good. Like, it just kind of like it was little sparks. I took that conversation, and I really wasn't able to get it out of my head. So I brought it up to my mom, and then she, on her route to see our grandparents up in Randolph at the time, she was like, "Hey, I seen this sign of a guy selling honey." Because I mean, you're gonna find stuff like that more outside of North, like in more rural, suburban areas. So she sent me a picture of the sign, and from that picture of the sign, I called the guy, was talking to him, and he was like, "You're a little bit late in the season, so I don't know exactly how it's gonna go." But he literally was like, I don't know. I've never seen any bees in Newark. He was like, all right, let's see what happens. Like, I'll help you, I'll help you teach you and stuff like that. And I had already started researching. So I'm like, oh, this and that. He's like, so I could tell, you know a little bit of what you're talking about. But he was telling me forget all the books. He was like, you need to be with a mentor, to really, learn what you're talking about, stuff like that. And he really did. I would check in with him periodically. And then once the season like kind of turned around, I think I met with him towards the mid to late summer, so it was too late at that point to start. So he was like, when we come back around to spring, reach out to me, and if you're still interested, I'll get you situated with your first hives and bees.
Mhm. And also in Newark, so you're bringing that expertise, a passion, but also redeveloping these areas and empty spaces that otherwise, wouldn't have anything that flourishing. Um, Share with us that process because it's a passion, but it's also a passion that has a very strong social purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think growing up, and this is where I can, introduce my sister because my sister, she's a really a big, influence and driving force for a lot of things we do. But I know that she was our first like kind of like mindful presence and letting us know about environmentalism. So our first interaction was just littering. So you eat something, you just toss the wrapper. And she's like slapping us or going back and picking up the things that we're throwing on the floor. Because you're walking around Newark and you become a product of your environment. So if you see trash all over the place, it becomes common, comes like common to you. But once you have that small little reminder, it kind of like that's just your entry point, and from there, there's a bigger world of food waste and sustainability and all these different things and offshoots. So when I look at beekeeping, for example, I was first introduced to it from a developmental standpoint when I was working with the city of Newark in the Office of Sustainability. So there, I was introduced to a lot of urban farmers because a lot of like you would see a farm or what might look like a farm, but there'd be no signs, there's no marketing. It's really kind of hard. And then the farmers have other jobs, have other things going on. So there's not like they're constantly being occupied to where you can just walk up and talk to somebody. So you might see like what might seem like an urban farm, but there wasn't too many opportunities for engagement. So once I started actually working with the Office of Sustainability, I had more access to this now pool and network of people, and it kind of opened my mind up. And I'm like, well, what's missing from this? Well, we don't have beekeeping. We don't have a lot of things that are still represented within agriculture. So I thought, okay, let's invite this because of colony collapse disorder, which was, big in, I think, 2017, 2019, where we saw unprecedented losses of bees, not just in the United States, but I think it was like globally. We're seeing all types of bees and pollinators where we're declining and stuff like that. So I'm just seeing all these intersections. We have the revitalization of the properties. We have the protection of these native pollinators and different things like that. So it just seemed like a no-brainer to kind of, replace the urban blight at the vacant lot, which we do with the Adopt a Lot program with the city of Newark. So we get our spot for $1 a year. And from there, it's like there's like no reason not to. When I looked at the part of that we have to do as a developers, we're just bringing in some wood chips. We're just setting up some garden beds. We're just maybe bringing the beehives and really kind of facilitating. People always ask me like, oh, you did this and you did that. We're really just kind of facilitating and organizing more than we're actually. I mean, I'll be outside working hard, but that's like the least part of it. It's really just kind of making it more accessible for people, so now they see what is possible here.
There's a few things that people might not know. First of all, that WBGO is not only about jazz; they have other types of programs. And two, there are also programs provided and facilitated by the city of Newark and the Office of Sustainability,
Right.
Ewa Cabral. Shout out to Ewa Cabral. Um, what guide us through what's also going on in a more socially responsible uh, component of this dynamic. So WBGO also facilitates these programs, and then this one in particular from the city of Newark.
So I think you have many institutions that have, really established themselves, through a lot of this social enterprising in the city of Newark. So you have WBGO, the public radio station. You have the Newark Public Library. You have one which, I'm 50-50 with, but the Greater Newark Conservancy, which what these institutions represent are supposed to be these hubs for, exchange, for conversation, for growth and development. And I think Newark is in a really interesting and really great spot right now where, we're becoming a host for entrepreneurs, for tech, for art, a lot of things that, there's always been there, but now we're just becoming a lot more serious and formal because now we feel like we're kind of opening to the world stage with, being having so much proximity to New York. We were kind of like the distant cousin for a long time, like kind of like riding the coattails. But now, with folks being priced out of New York and just, so many economic and different change, political, yeah, so many different changes, it's kind of lending itself to a really good environment where it's like, if you're here and you're a mover and a shaker, then there's an opportunity for you where a lot of people are now descending on Newark and really kind of really looking at it as not just a work site, but maybe a place you can live, maybe a spot where you can raise a family.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of those institutions and the programs, the events, the entrepreneurs, like the things that we're offering, is making it a much more good environment for these things to occur.
And why do you think that Newark is going through such a momentum, inviting momentum?
I think it's time. I think it's time. You think about, the legacy of Newark and it being such an important spot and place in, the United States history as one of the legacy cities. So we're one of these industrial locations that, is producing a lot. You have all the beer companies. You have, just so many different offshoots and extensions and different industries that were actually really built and brought up in this city. So when you think about the timing, I mean, you think about all right, now when you think about some of the more negative things like the Newark Rebellion, or some people will refer to as the riots, and that's when we took a deep economic downturn. And then you see, now Newark is becoming this like hood that's like, it's just filled with crime and it's this and it's that. But if it's such a bad spot, then how come all these corporate locations are making it their headquarters? How come, like there's all these properties being bought and sold and all these things are being happening, and then you start to understand that, the people who are controlling the narrative are are doing it in a way where if they project this vision from the outside, now they're able to maneuver a lot, in the inside, and this is able to happen and that's able to happen. But I think with social media, I think with just where the world's at, there's kind of a veil being lifted. So there's not as much, stuff that's able just to kind of just happen behind the scenes. People are asking questions. People are, demanding answers in a lot of ways, I think, right now. And I think it's given the perfect environment to kind of like push for meaningful change.
Mhm. You touch an interesting topic, which is for many years we were the distant cousin of New York City. I mean, technically, if we were to compete with New York City, I mean, I don't think that any city could eventually win in that sense. Now, w- what Newark has to do, there's things about Newark that New York doesn't have. For instance, in terms of, as you know, we have a Portuguese background.
Hmm.
I'm just giving you an example based
Yeah.
on the things I do know.
Hmm.
There's no restaurant in New York City, with all due respect for one that there is that we also like and we know the owner. But in terms of authentic
Yeah.
food,
Yeah.
authentic,
Yeah.
you don't find it this the way you see you find in Newark. So I think that the time and the strategy is for us to promote Newark for what Newark truly is. We don't have to be in New York City.
Right.
We can also be a complement. We can come up with a different type of experience that is complementary to the tri-state area. And while you're in New York, why don't you also check Newark for that you don't find in New York? You don't find a councilman that it's also a rapper,
Yeah.
Dupe Kelly. You
Yep.
don't
Yep.
find a mayor that is also a spoken word artist. You don't find this vibrant scene that we have because thriving in New York City, there's a lot of competition, but you're already some sort of in a stimulant kind of environment and all. In Newark, we're building it.
Right.
Newark is still building it. So it's an example of resilience, authenticity, and during an era that we live in fake news that people don't trust the media, artificial intelligence. I guess the true value of Newark is stories like yours that remind us of the value of authenticity and being real and passionate about something that we truly love. And those are, and we should never really think of, yeah, but we're in New York and we're victims of that. No, we should maximize on the momentum. And while people are paying attention to this part of the world, discover this about Newark that you don't find in New York.
And I love New York. I remember growing up and it being like that. Oh, like y'all from across the water. But truthfully, New York has a lot of forward-thinking people. The way New York moves, it has a certain pace that I feel like they really set the tone, like you said, for the rest of the world. So I got a lot of love for New York, and especially seeing how we have this complementary relationship that's really growing. And I look at the pros and cons of both. You look at New York, while it's so grand and vast in some ways, in some markets, in some industries, it can be oversaturated so that it's like, you can get lost in so many, in the illusion of so many options and stuff like that. But then you also see, business is all about building trust with customers, with funders, with all the folks that work together to make the economy move in a positive direction. So I agree that Newark is really cool because I remember being at the front of anti-gentrification protests and from a social perspective, you see capitalism as a negative thing. But then when you really start to, be an entrepreneur or a leader in different spaces, then you start to understand, okay, well, how do we fund these social initiatives? How do we make these things sustainable so that they can have that communal benefit ongoingly and long-term effects? So then that kind of changes the conversation to, okay, cool. It's less about the challenge and more about the opportunity. And really, how do we create a situation where everybody can have a seat at the table? Because equity is also a big part in these conversations to make sure that the people that have been in these areas and that we're looking to serve are also a part of the conversation and be included, so folks don't feel like they're being priced out. Or like I've seen times where a building can be almost so nice that people don't feel like they necessarily belong there because they're assuming that, oh no, I want to be able to afford this, or it's okay. And I literally have been at events where I'm like, oh no, it's free, everybody come in, like, oh no, I'm okay. So really trying to find that in between where you're creating real inclusion and you're directly um, having open dialogues that help us really understand that we're not supposed to be judging books by our cover, or um, we're just always trying to move forward in a way that really is just kind of, like I said, inclusive, really bringing people together and not bringing people apart.
Hmm. You touch an interesting topic there, capitalism, um, and the importance of aligning like you do profit and social responsibility, because you are a wonderful business, and this is your honey, and you're the living example that you can have a business without forgetting what is also socially impactful and not necessarily be a volunteer. So you can be an entrepreneur that has an operation that aligns and it's in tune with the needs of the surrounding communities and makes Newark a better place.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that was one of the main things why I chose honey and beekeeping specifically.
And you have a
Be-
nice logo too.
Thank you. Well, and we can talk about that a little later. um, it was important to me, having a background in social work and also being a Newark resident. So definitely seeing how companies and organizations come into the city and will, talk about everything they're trying to do for residents, but residents in the equation exist as at the lowest part. So we're not in leadership roles where we're directly influencing development or directly influencing what type of businesses are coming to the city. And then even in the opportunities where there are public hearings or there are opportunities or forums for people to express them and give input and express themselves, sometimes we're not always so trained on really how to be effective in those spaces so that our voices still, hold true and stuff like that. So I thought about beekeeping because I thought even if I'm not able to provide direct benefits through the work, there's so many indirect benefits of, adding to the biodiversity, increasing the flora and the fauna in the area. And then not to mention, if nothing else worked out, hopefully I would just have a new skill that I could utilize for my friends and family. Unfortunately, it's been able to multiply and become something much bigger.
And for the ones who don't know, let's just go over your operation of at Apian Industry. So it's agriculture, environmental redevelopment.
Correct.
So and obviously the beekeeping. So let's break it down and use this platform to also shine as you deserve and share with the world the operation that is also making the work a better place.
So I know if you have, issues that are multifaceted, then you have to have solutions that are also, meeting these issues where they're at. So really looking for ways where we can kind of kill as many birds with as few stones as possible. And I think that agriculture really is that intersection that has so many different disciplines from, you have the creative, like the art that, is the murals. It's the flowers and the herbs. There is the educational, so being able to interact with all the different young people and find places where they can really, explore and have, opportunities for self-discovery. So I feel like, the farm, you got the tough guys. So if I want to get a bunch of high school guys, let's go chop some wood. You know what I'm saying? It'll seem like, oh, whoa, like, I've had the toughest, I don't want to be here to like oh, that was pretty cool. Or even, you got people who are interested in the bees or the chickens, or some folks who just, will appreciate being outdoors and having something to do. Or, of course, how could we forget food? Something that is, a cornerstone of all cultures and is able to really bring people together. So, there's being so many opportunities for engagement, I just figure, this is probably the best place because in social work, I would often feel very limited. You're taught to, keep a boundary between you and the people that you work with because you have to maintain, professionalism and different things like that. And I always felt a little bit conflicted because how can I expect somebody to trust me or really open up to me so that we can really get them the help that they need if, I'm always keeping them at an arm's distance. So I think that, being local in the community and, trying to help provide these solutions really does show people that, I'm also affected by food insecurity, by the liquor stores, by the crime, all these different things. So it's like I'm also a recipient of those negative impacts, but it doesn't mean that our lives are any less meaningful or that it's like we're condemned. There's so many ways from detoxing, heavy metals and microplastics is really big right now. There's just so many things that you can do to still have a certain quality of life, even if you're limited and you're in an urban setting.
Nice. And how has the youth reacted to these programs? You see some that some potential farmers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the youth are probably one of the main reasons why I've really stuck with it, truthfully, because it's really just, making sure that they have plenty of examples of people that are doing, and that this is someone like I've got to be careful not to like spend, like, because I was, even when I was prepping for this, I was like, my sister, my sister, my sister, my sister, like this keeps like flashing in my head. But I think that you need people that let you know that it's okay to be different. And then when you see that and you understand that, you may have a certain interest or you may have a certain talent or skill. Every human being has that. So really being able to really, go down that path, go down that journey, explore that, and explore what that means for yourself, but even see how that can inspire and even educate other people. So the children are always like some of my greatest inspirations, just because you know I'm starting from right here. But when I think about George Washington Carver, who he's I went to the school. A lot of like urban cities have a Martin Luther King Street, have a George Washington Carver school. We were taught about him about peanuts, but his legacy is so much grander than just peanuts. I mean, this guy was like he was like revered by the president. He was like internationally known like for botany and science and all these other things. So it's really a young person who's going to see beekeeping and they might be like, okay, that's already being done. I want to do aquaponics or I want to do marine biology or I want to do, whatever they want to do, but just adding to this field, which is so vast. When we think about environmentalism, climate change, it's a impending issue that the youth are going to be the ones that aren't only dealing with the brunt of it, but they're also going to be responsible for keeping hope alive, for looking at new technologies and new solutions because you know that's going to be there. I could barely work TikTok, and I'm not even that old yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's really going to be them really taking the helm and and really kind of helping us all.
And there are some interesting stories of talents that you've been discovering that at first are like, I don't know, and all of a sudden they're really passionate about it.
Um, and no, so now remind me to phrase that a little bit. I'm sorry.
Like, do you have any case that like examples of kids that at first were a little bit, I don't know if agriculture is for me, and all of a sudden now they're really passionate.
Oh, well, I think it is like again, like the leadership element of really just, I'm not a leader in terms of telling people what to do. I'm not authoritarian. I'm really just an example of somebody just, taking those first steps. So that's really it could be in anything. They could still, choose a career that has nothing to do with agriculture, but they're just seeing like, okay, what issues I always tell them what issues are most important to me or what issues are most important to y'all. And those are the places where you should aim to affect change in. So there is a world full of problems. So I'm like, you have the pick of the litter. You know what I'm saying? You can do whatever you want, but just where can you be the most effective? Uh, where um, uh, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself being happy? Where do you see yourself being impactful? And really getting them to see themselves as change makers today, as now, not when you're done graduating college, not when you get enough money. Even if it's just being more helpful at home with your parents or being more helpful to your neighbors, it's really just finding, where can I add value? And then there is a lot of self-determination, positive self-identity, which I think a lot of young people struggle with now. And now we end up imitating a lot of what's projected to us. So it's a lot of what we see through uh, the music culture or a lot of what you see in entertainment. Where I remember volunteering at schools and we did surveys on, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we have a bunch of high schoolers saying they want to be entertainers, athletes. Those are the main things. But they're not saying they want to be entertainers or athletes. They're saying they want stable careers that are going to allow them to actually have a means for themselves. But there's such a range of careers that they could actually do. So really just trying to open them up to see that, there's a huge world of opportunity. And despite, whatever circumstances that we come up with, we all still have equal access to be able to, be great.
Hmm. Very good. Uh, when we were talking about the momentum that Newark was going through, um, you mentioned that Newark's such an industrial city, so productive, and obviously with such great locations, the port and all. Um, People normally don't associate agriculture, soil in a city like Newark, and but urban farming is a thing, and it's a vibrant one in Newark. Why do you think that that sector in particular is also growing in Newark so much?
Agriculture? Well, I mean, I think that our food sources are in danger. You have food shortages for a variety of reasons from, we have food being imported from places, so the quality of food is in question. And then you have, corporations who this is the more dark side of capitalism, who in essence to drive profit. Now we've added a lot of things that we don't really necessarily need to be able to extend the life of it to make sure we turn over that profit and get a return on our investment. So now food is becoming ever more such a necessity to be focused on what we're eating, how it's affecting us, how it's affecting the environment, and really making sure that it's not something that exists in a silo anymore where you can just not think of it. It's constantly being projected to us in many different ways from plastic bans, or everybody complains about the cardboard straws, hates cardboard straws, stuff like that. But it's like we really cannot continue to consume the way that we are. Even sometimes after becoming a farmer, and I look at, it took me 3 months to make this melon and then we're gonna eat it in 15 minutes. How is this happening? How is this possible that we go into stores in multiple places and they're all full? So I mean, some of that food is gonna be fake. Some of that food is gonna be, like I said, imported from another country where we're not even paying the farmers that are making it a fair wage for them to be able to, live and have a certain quality of life. There's just so many things in the food system right now that just really need a overhaul. And we're really gonna get the most nutritious, we're going to get the most rewarding experience from growing our food locally or at least sourcing it locally.
Hmm. And so the advantages are local empowerment, healthier uh, produce.
Better
Um,
conscience.
what would you like? people to know about the food, the agriculture scene here, and what would you like to see happening so that operations like yours keep on flourishing?
Okay. I mean, there's many ways I can
In
answer that
simple
question. In
terms,
simple term, in
because
simple
let's
terms.
also understand that not everybody is
Right.
an expert in the field.
Right. Right. It's so funny to see myself as an expert. Right. 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 After all this time, but yeah. Um, I always tell people to start small, because it can be a little bit intimidating, a little bit daunting, trying to change your diet. You can't eat this, you can't eat that. Oh, you can't shop there, you can't shop there. It can be a little bit restrictive. And we want to change people's relationship with food to be one that is more uplifting, one that is more encouraging, and one that is like a health journey where people are feeling encouraged to want to, take their health more seriously and be more fit and be more this. And in farming, for example, like I'm so outdoors and doing stuff outside that sometimes, I mean, I've been able to stay active just from, being outdoors, just producing food for myself. So there's all these things that, once you're involved, then it's going to actually get easier. So it might start like this, but before you know it, it's going to, end up coming down. And now, you know more than you started off with, after your first year of farming. Now you got seeds for next year. The earth is such a beautiful place with, so many different benefits. And, in the city, we're losing a lot of those natural benefits that so that we can't appreciate all that the world has to offer. So I think that, people should definitely try to slow down. I think it's going to help ground a lot of folks, just getting involved with it can be in Newark, but you got plenty of farms in New Jersey. We're in the Garden State, so we have plenty of opportunities to get involved. And you go out, you volunteer, or maybe you even they have a lot of places that are really into agritourism now where you can go cherry picking, you can go blueberry picking, apple picking. So you find, and this is great activities for families, stuff like that. So you find an interest or you find an area, and you start there. And some people interact from cooking. So there's the chefs at home that gotta do meal prep for their families. You just find one area that you could devote some time into, and you let that be the spark that really kind of ignites the flame. And before you know it, you connect with other people in the industry, outside the industry, and that's the best place to start. And I think for a lot of the institutions, I think the institutions and the organizations and the companies, I think it is important to kind of hold the line. And sometimes sustainability is more expensive in this stage. Right now it's more expensive because we're not going to see the cost savings until years later once they're starting to add up. So yeah, it may be more expensive in the upfront. Um, we might have to do something that seems a little bit revolutionary because it's so different than what we were normally used to. But when you're really trying to, be impactful, you really have to set the tone in a lot of ways. So I really do call organizations and businesses to really, take up, these more sustainable practices and stuff like that. And they may not be, the most. It's not necessarily about ROI right now because we're talking about return on investment to the environment. We're talking on social responsibility. So sometimes it's hard to quantify that.
Health.
Health, which how do you quantify that? It's like when you need it, you need it. So really just yeah, I put a lot of onus on them.
Hmm. It's about education. Mm. And regarding Newark, in terms of the ecosystem, um, what can we say about it in terms of the soil and how is it? Because
Well, I'll say for the soil, our soil is contaminated. We got acid rain, we got a lot of different variables. So I wouldn't say just go outside and start eating stuff that you might get on the ground or just throw some seeds out there, like, maybe as an experiment, but you definitely want to be careful because that was one thing that I definitely thought of when I was coming into urban farming and I grew some cucumbers or tomatoes and I'm trying to give it to people and they're like, oh, we don't want that. Like, oh, and I'm like, what? So now you got to really make sure that you're like building trust with people. So I have to have my credentials in place. I have my serve safe. I have the top level food serve safe management certification. So now that I've done the work of educating myself, now people can rest knowing that the products are made properly with the proper consideration, stuff like that. And yeah, so soil, water, we all know the lead crisis, and that's one thing that I am grateful to not only the mayor, but a lot of organizations that have come in, like the North Water Coalition, and really done their part to kind of help remediate some of those things. So, you have your soil, you have your water, and then you have your air, just all these natural things and the sun, which in the city, some of these things can be distorted where, we might have more intense heat in the city at different points because all the concrete and this and that. Um, again, I don't want people to get overthink things. Just do your research, and that'll kind of set the stage and give you a good roadmap to really see where you should start.
But there are definitely ways to produce
A million,
and eat safely. That's what I
absolutely,
wanted
absolutely,
to demystify some of these ideas, because normally when you think of farms, you think of like these green
yeah,
acres and the rural areas,
hmm
and sometimes urban farming can be a victim of the preconceived
that
notion
is
that
true.
we have of big cities.
Well, I tell people, use your imagination, because like there is such a world of opportunities. So I always encourage people to like, if there's something that you don't see, then maybe that's where we need to be focusing our time and our energy. So I always tell people to be creative.
Hmm. Um, when you were at Seton Hall, did you ever imagine that you could be a successful entrepreneur and such an inspiration
Never.
like you are?
No, I really wasn't thinking about. I was trying to get through school. Yeah, and I was honestly, playing around a lot too, slacking off. So I mean, like, once I wasn't focused on medicine as much, then my mind kind of started to wander, and I thought a lot about my personal life and what I was going through. And that became what was most important at the time, was just kind of like focusing on my like self. And then, once you're, fortunate enough to overcome certain hurdles, then, usually your mind is like, okay, how do I help other people, get through this? And yeah, so from then I didn't know exactly how I was going to do things, but I just think about all the people, family, friends. Truthfully, one of my greatest inspirations is Harriet Tubman, because I think of somebody who, is, putting themselves in harm's way, or somebody who's going through something difficult, not once, not twice, but multiple times. And there's nothing, she didn't have to do those things, but she did them. And if she weren't able to do those things, that there's a chance that I may not be here, or that my life could be drastically different. So, hopefully, I feel like our part is so easy. You know what I'm saying? We get to hang out, we get to chill, we get to learn, we get to, they kind of, pave the way for us to be able to just, be comfortable being ourselves, but, having to be, you know, do something important.
Mhm. So it's great timing. Newark is happening. Um, you're happening. There's a great scene. Obviously, they're also coming with the coolest boots now, because I don't remember farming boots being this fly. So there's also that.
Gotta make it cool. You gotta make it cool. Gotta make it somewhat a spectacle.
Of course. So in terms of your plans for the future, where do you see things heading? Um, it's growth. What can we expect from apian industry, and where can people also find more of your products and interact and participate?
Yeah, so we're local. So the farm is 149 Fabian Place. Folks are always welcome. This season, we're looking forward to having a lot of programming, having a lot of residents and stuff like that from the area. Because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get folks involved, but we're not making any excuses this season. We're gonna have our signs. We're gonna be organized, because that's been a difficult thing where you know you don't get to wait for when you want to do something with farming. You kind of have to really be on God's timing, when it comes to that. So we're going to be organized this season. I'm going to give everybody plenty of time in advance to schedule for our volunteer days. You can find us online, APN Industry. So that's on IG, or we have a website, but we're most commonly on social media. So Facebook, all the major platforms, we're there. And for the future, it's interesting because life and things are always changing, but it is important to have a consistent vision. And I think my vision is, and it's always has been, is a better quality of life for the people around me. So, whether I'm in Newark, am I in New York, whatever, I'm in a different country, it's always going to be about helping, us, have a better quality of life. So that could be in a bunch of different ways, but right now I've seen it as in, the things that I appreciate are product design, or, redevelopment, um, or,
Product
just
design.
yeah, you see, so expanding on the line, see, so how can we create other value added products? Because it takes me so long to make this honey. So I'm like, Is it better utilized in a drink, in a gummy? So really just find any ways to replace, your conventional sugar and substitute it with honey, or even think about, we also started a dehydrated fruit line called Peels and Wheels, and it's really just to show people the things that they could do at home, but also, the different products and different things you can use. So with the Peels and Wheels, that's dehydrated fruit. So for just a quick example, you have an orange, which, is in one product right there, and then you dry it out. That's a different product. And then the extra additional peels, excess peels from creating that product, we turn into a cleaner. So it actually does become a really fun process being able to, just kind of manipulate things and kind of draw out the benefits and have less side effects. A lot of the cleaners, detergents, a lot of the stuff that we have, there's all these different side effects. So this is a lifelong journey of pursuing health and kind of helping other people kind of get there together.
And there's a lot interesting because there's a lot of products that we can reutilize and recycle. Even with uh, bees don't produce only honey, right? There's also other things.
Yeah, so you got there another superfood that people often talk about, which is bee pollen, or something you may not hear about often, which is propolis. We do research with about bee venom, which who would have thought it has anti-cancer properties. There is just a, a myriad, just such a wealth of different, avenues to travel that are seemingly untapped in a lot of ways, that you would think that, oh yeah, they tried that or they're doing that. But right now, unfortunately, in the United States, there is a industry built on people, not only being ignorant, but also being sick. So as long as we're in an environment where that's happening, then, these things are going to be more suppressed. So it's important for us to, prioritize them and kind of uplift them as much as we can, so we can see a more like, facilitating environment. And I think that we are at a time where I go to different conferences and stuff like that, and they talk about now wellness is becoming more popular because we're all investing in more sustainable green things. A lot of companies are starting to prioritize those things, but we have to just make sure that they don't greenwash, or that they don't, distort our message. We have to make sure the message stays very clear on environmentalism, sustainability, adding value, not extracting value, and kind of, whatever we're taking, we're giving. When we're taking one tree, we're planting three more, and just kind of having that mentality. Because, just imagine what the world's going to look like in 100 years if we're doing things the right way.
People say that Generation Z and these younger generations are more purpose driven and healthier. They're not as, I mean, I was born in 1982, but if people ask, you can say that I think I'm 21 or 22, I'm not sure. But our generation, we're all about, going out, light life, although Newark has a huge tradition of house music. It feels that this generation is more about maybe earlier hours. I mean, they of going out, eating healthier, choosing better choices as far as brands with purpose, Patagonian,
Yeah.
the way they produce.
Yep.
Do you think that you feel that impact of that mentality that is also shaping the industry somehow, that there's more momentum around this wellness, holistic also approach to food and lifestyle?
So I think Gen Z, like I said, and when I say young people, I mean young people. There's a wide range of, of young people, not even just the little babies, but, you got the college students, you got all different types of, there's such a range. Um, Folks still need guidance. I think one thing I've understood from farming and agriculture is a lot of is important for the intergenerational relationships that occur within this. A lot of my first teachers in farming, they were exclusively all women, and they varied in, the different stages in their life. And I learned various things from all these women, from a sister in Kenya who taught me to be unapologetic and just to kind of like not be fearful in the pursuit of knowledge. So you're going to make mistakes. You're not always going to know things, but that shouldn't stop you from trying. And she would be like, I'd be like, what plant is this? She'd be like, I don't know. Look it up. And then from that, we were able to learn different things. Or even some of the sisters who, like one of the biggest farmers in the city, Charmaine, given 1/10, she has a beautiful farm. She's expanding in every direction. And, I learned a lot about, being organized and, kind of being on that schedule. So you plant your seed here, and then from there to seedling, and then next you're harvesting here. Because if you don't come and harvest at the right time, then you'll have a spoiled harvest. So, really just seeing where everybody fits in that establishment. And you see a lot of farmers are reaching a certain, they're aging out of the system right now. So it's really kind of, we haven't seen it so much yet, but we will see it in the future where we're going to need, younger people really wanting to pursue these careers and knowing that they could make a living doing it, that they could add a lot of value, and that we need them, and that they're going to have a really important role in that system. And yeah, you got to learn. So you might start off volunteering, which is how I started volunteering, because you'll see, like I said, it's so funny how they'll talk about, women's work and stuff like that. But farming is very physically strenuous. So when I tell you that all my first teachers were women, like I'm like, this ain't seeming like just women's work for real. It's really a community, like a village type thing where now I've had a few years in it. I'm okay with some younger volunteers helping out and moving stuff around too. So you really just see, okay, where can we be the most effective? And I think, I'm really grateful for a lot of those intergenerational relationships that help you really understand why time exists.
Hmm. Young kids that are interested, uh, what can they expect to find at apian industry? It's bees, but you were also telling me about chickens.
Mhm. So they can expect to find a pretty lax, pretty chill environment. I'm pretty, like I don't like a lot of rules. I think I started off like being like kind of a rebeller and like a disruptor, but now I'm kind of more relaxed, more chill. But I still try to create that environment where people can be self-guided and people can kind of move at their own pace. I tell folks, when the kids, children, excuse me, the young people come to volunteer, you can work or you can hang out. It's up to you. Because I mean, not forcing anybody to do anything. And oftentimes, when everybody's working or fellowshipping, people are gonna, come in.
They feel like, well, I guess I got to work too.
The-
Right? Nobody wants to be the slack.
I'm telling you, where like literally I'll get all the time too, where the girls are smarter than men. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I've been in too many working environments to see women are just smarter than men in some situations. So you'll see the young girls now they're working, and the guys now they just kind of feel peer pressured. Now they like, okay, we can't just let them just do all the stuff. Now we got to get more involved. So you're able to build on a lot of those that just kind of like natural happenings and stuff like that. But I think the young people they're going to expect just a nice environment. Learning, I think when I understood about learning, especially going to college, is there's a lot of fear in learning. I don't want to be wrong. People don't want to raise their hands. They don't want to look stupid and stuff like that. So you kind of want to minimize that. Like you'll have the young people we're going through and I'm asking questions. They like, oh, you stupid. You know what I'm saying? Or make a joke. And I'm like, hey, I don't got a lot of rules, but we need positive self-talk and we got to, encourage each other because it takes a lot of courage to, you know,
Expose your vulnerabilities or
exactly.
insecurities.
Exactly. So I always try to make sure that it's a sound learning environment. And a lot of times that just means, you got to be encouraging, supportive, and really build on people's natural inclinations. So a lot of times we're trying to find things that they already are recognizing in their own daily life. Like we always talk about any fragrance or any flavor is derived from nature. So I'll take them to the mint. And I'm like, now, where would you see this at home? Toothpaste, maybe you might see Febreze. Yeah, all that comes from nature. Well, very far from it, but I mean, at some point, it was derived from nature, or it's inspired by nature. And hopefully, once you create those connections, I mean, I wonder about some of the new products and some of the new things that we haven't even seen yet that they're going to create.
Hmm. So right now you have the honey. What type of other products can we expect?
So we have the honey, we have our peels and wheels. I'm interested in spices and really just things that are shelf stable. So looking for things that we can make shelf stable, but still keep the nutritional value. So you have dehydrating, you have freeze drying, which is becoming more popular right now, and even looking at I'm not really into. So I mean, like everybody, like a lot of people like to eat meat, but not a lot of people would probably want to kill the animals themselves. So as now I'm on this side, I'm like, man, if I had to do this, would I want to do that? So I'm 50-50 with the meats because that we'd probably be sourcing them from places. But really, truthfully, I want to do the whole grocery store. I want to go through the whole grocery store and I want to kind of redo everything kind of from scratch and kind of have a place where, we have other food-based businesses and entrepreneurs that can also, because I mean, I'm starting, in this area, but you have people who have a more of an affinity for different things. So kind of creating an environment where we got the woman that makes the bread, We got the folks that make the that. We got the folks that make them. Of course, we need hot food. You know, we need to cook stuff like that. And I'll just give everybody the raw materials, and then I just get to eat. You know.
I like that. Throughout this whole process, what has been the most rewarding part of it all?
Uh, that's gonna be a tough one. That's gonna be a tough. You know what? You know what I will say. The probably the most rewarding thing is, you know, growing and seeing things change in myself to where you think that there's a bunch of external things changing and happening, but really once you change and your heart is able to change, then you see like the world will change. So that's why it's like my perspective changed a lot when I learned more, when I slowed down, when I stopped taking no for an answer, when I started standing up for myself, when I started, just seeing myself and moving differently because now I felt like I have a cause and I have a mission that I can't compromise with people. I can't play around with folks. So I would, there's a certain like fiery spirit that I was normally a passive person. I was very like, just stay out the way. I don't want any issues, don't want any conflict. And now I'm looking for conflict anywhere I can, you know what I'm saying? Because if it's anything that's going to forward this mission and forward this, then I will become whoever I have to be to make this possible.
It's a positive, constructive conflict, though.
Yeah.
How do you see the future, and what would you like to see happening?
I see the future. I see the future is bright. Future is bright, and hopefully it's healthy. It's green. And just really being able to enjoy family is so funny. Growing up, you see a lot of parents. They have to leave and spend a lot of time away from their families to support their families. So really trying to disrupt those type of systems where it's like your children should be with you and learning from you, your mannerisms, your habits, so that they can know how they should be showing up in the world and stuff like that. So really wanting to change a lot of what we're seeing to be completely different, completely new system where folks, have the things that they need. We're not operating out of scarcity and just everybody's enjoying the best of what life has to offer.
Mhm. Going back to the complementary differences between New York and Newark, people that don't know Newark, what would you like for them to know? And that makes Newark very unique.
What would I like people to know about Newark? What makes Newark unique is I spend a lot of time walking in the streets and stuff like that and really looking for the beauty and trying to find things I appreciate. And, you know, there's so many, so it's like where to start. I think Newark is a pretty interesting environment because, you know, whereas other places people will get pushed out or there's like I think Newark is more of like we're just adding to it. So we're not necessarily, pushing anybody out or uh ripping down buildings and starting new stuff. We're actually adding to infrastructure. We're restoring buildings. We're adding to a lot of what's already here. So I think that I'm also somebody who's very inviting, welcoming, warm. I think that there's been a culture in Newark of like people always ask, where you from? And they're trying to kind of gauge and kind of G check you a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But I kind of welcome people to the city because that's what makes the United States, but also like all these different places so beautiful is the melting pot. And you give a little bit what you got, I give a little bit what I got, and we're all able to enjoy something better together. So I really look at Newark as definitely making it wanting to be a more welcoming place for people, and then wanting to honor the people that are already here because they're coming with their own information and with their own benefits and stuff like that. And I do see the opportunity for us to kind of make it all come together. And then when you see places like Jersey City, you see places like Detroit, you see places that, or New York, which are at a further place in their development, we have an opportunity to make sure some of those things, that some of the not so great things, don't happen here. So I think that's the biggest opportunity we have. Where if there's something that you don't want to happen, or something that is you think is an issue, then do your part to make sure that it doesn't become a problem.
Mhm. I think they already touched all the main topics. Where can people find you? Where can people get your products, support your cause?
So you're gonna have to come find us at a farmers market or a vending event, and that is APN Industry. So that's APIAN and then Industry INDUSTRY. Hopefully I spelled that correctly.
Mhm.
That's how you can find us on social media, or you can just go on Google. Yep.
Very good. Anything else you'd like to add that I didn't ask? I think you already.
I think you did a good job.
Very good. Marcellus, Alexander. And also, if you really liked Marcellus, obviously you did. He's amazing. You could also see him in this edition of Savor Newark as one of our guest speakers. It will be an honor to have you.
Thank you so much.
We have great admirers. Please know that. So support local farmers, local talent, and people with purpose. As to us, don't forget to follow Savor Newark, also at Plusable _PR, and stay tuned for more information on Savor Newark 2026 edition with a twist of also the World Cup. I'll see you in the next episode.